Beach Boys! How's it going, Connor? Probably good.
Nope.
Oh, not today? Oh, man.
One day it won't be. Yeah.
I'm still alive. I'm still alive after the end of our last episode. Things were a little rocky. But, yep, I'm here. I'm here today. No thunder today. But
Good. It's been raining. I've yet to see sunny skies for like a whole week straight for a long time. So,
really? It's been pretty rainy here. Well, it's just been cloudy. Like yesterday it was misty. Yeah, I don't know. It must be everyone's just getting ready for November, I guess. Storms are brewing.
We're getting used for the London rain. We're just getting used to that, right?
Yeah, of course.
That's what we've been warned about.
Yeah.
So, we should just jump into that, right? We should just talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
The London conference, we are going. Pulling up the speaker list that has been, I don't know if it's completely finalized or what, but pretty much all of it is here. Where did the headliners go? I just had them. Unless they took them down. I don't think they took them down. There we go. Speakers. Here we go. I don't know. I'm going to pull up the image I had earlier. So the headline speakers. So they announced these. Well, I don't know if they announced them, but we got it off the website. These are the headline speakers. So we have Roger Ver from Bitcoin.com. Everyone knows who he is. Dr. Craig Wright. Ryan Charles. Jimmy Nguyen. Widya Salam. Michael Hudson. Lauren Gameroff. And Alex Agut. I don't know how to pronounce his name. We did this last time when we interviewed him.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is that we've interviewed now 4 of the people on this list. And you're like, well, no, guys, you've only interviewed 3 of the people on this list. That's incorrect because we are interviewing Jimmy Nguyen today. So we're excited about that. You'll see that in a short minute here after we finish this introduction. But there's also speakers that they had on the website that if I could find, they are there. There are other speakers that also sound pretty exciting. So we're going to have interviewed half this list by the end of today. So that's really exciting. Speaker list, really exciting. So you can get your tickets at CoinGeekWeek.com. We have a link. We'll put a link in the description. As we've been saying, we'll be there. We're really excited about it. Yeah. Anything else we should say about that?
Yeah, go sign up.
Go sign up.
Yeah.
Come.
I'm looking forward to it.
Come get some pints with us.
Yeah.
Jimmy promised us 5 pints, right? Is that what he said?
I think he said 4.
4.
You
We're
know.
American. We'll do 5.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll cover the 5th one.
Yeah. So CoinGeek Week, exciting stuff. Jimmy Nguyen today in a minute. We'll get to that. We wanted to bring up a few other things. First thing, we need to give, I think we've talked about him in BitDB before, but Unrighter is amazing. Gonna pull him up as well. This guy, I mean, the amount of stuff this guy's building is absolutely insane. He created BitDB. We'll put links to all this down below, but he created BitDB, which is pretty much, he pretty much took a Mongo database and I mean, I can't even, honestly, it's almost amazing what this guy's been doing. I can't even relate to you everything he's been doing, how quickly he's been doing it. But BitDB, you can check that out. We'll put a link, bitdb.network. But he just released the other day, or yesterday, BitQuery, which is a Turing-complete Bitcoin query language for building immutable, unstoppable APIs, right? So there's a yours post. He kind of describes how it works. We won't go too into this right now to kind of save on time, but check out the yours post. We'll put a link. I mean, seriously, the amount of things that you can build with the tools he's released is insane. And in just one day since he's released that, and Corey, I know you can't see my screen. I'm sorry, but
It's all good.
Skype. We're using Skype. I don't want to mess anything up. So, but you can see here, I can search the entire blockchain for text, right? So we tried this earlier. Just searched BCH Boys in quotes. and we come up. There's results from memo.cash and any other possibility that the BCH boys has brought up in the blockchain occurs. And you can actually see the very first one. I thought this was pretty cool, Corey. The very, 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 well, sorry, no, not the very first search result, but the very first result going way back when was April 15th, 2018, when Corey and I were across the airport in Denver. So we posted on Memo saying we were across the airport in Denver. We didn't get to see each other.
Yeah, just missed it.
Yeah, we were separated across the terminal there for a few minutes. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, so you can just, what do we Google for Bitcoin? Built one day after Unrighter released that BitQuery tool. I honestly can't imagine what else we're going to see out of here. And yeah, the first result when you search BCH boys is under the Bitcoin Cash topic on Memo, or no, Bitcoin Cash podcast topic. And we're okay. I listened to the BCH boys and they're okay, but they kind of sound like a PR firm for Craig at times. So good news for this guy. Let me figure out who he is. He's on Memo. Good news for this guy. We got Jimmy on the podcast today, so we're gonna be a PR firm for Jimmy today, not Craig. Hope that works for you. Alexander Pegram. Hope he's listening. Physics, VR, Bitcoin Cash, and boxing. All right. Thanks for listening to us, Alexander.
Hey, at least we're not bad. We got an okay.
Yeah, as long as we don't drop below okay, I'll be happy.
Yeah, so. I'm okay with okay. I'm okay with that.
Oh my gosh.
But that is really sweet though, especially when you're talking about, censorship resistant search engines through blockchain, and like what's been going on with, I don't know if our followers pay attention with what's going on in China a little bit, controlling a little bit the search engines. You mentioned like the social credit thing that's going on too over there. It's just kind of crazy, and a tool like this is going to be pretty cool. I think we'll finally start to see what blockchain is all about on the same chain. So,
I think when people start to get over the concept of everything on chain, like everything, like the internet on chain, which from what I hear is what we're going to hear a little bit about at the CoinGeek conference. When you get over that concept of maybe something shouldn't be on chain, you really open up limitless possibilities. And I think something like oyo.cash, that's the name of that search engine. We'll put a link there, but I think we're at the very beginning of some of the crazy things that you can see on Bitcoin Cash. So, Corey, good news. I think I figured out how to share screen real quick. Let's see. Share screen. All right. So
sweet.
We can move on to our next topic. Okay. So this is a whole can of worms. But this, I think, is going to lead pretty nicely into our interview with Jimmy, right? So, because Jimmy talked about this a bit. And we should mention real quick, in the interview with Jimmy, we had some sound issues. Had to cut some stuff up just because literally you couldn't hear Jimmy. And then we made him repeat himself probably 5 times. So we appreciate him kind of going through that for us. So if you think we didn't censor the interview or anything like that, just literally he was cutting out on us. We made him repeat himself 5 times probably. And I'm sure he was pretty annoyed by that. So
we apologize, Jimmy.
Yeah, we apologize. So we'll see how the whole video comes up. It might come up a little. Actually, I'm not going to apologize, Jimmy, because I don't think that was us. I think that was you. So. But no. Anyway, so we talked about this idea of Nakamoto Consensus, right? That kind of came up in the interview. That's something we've been talking about like a lot, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially on our white paper series.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, so that's kind of what I wanted to bring this up, right? So the Bitcoin ABC, they did a Q&A. Okay, so we'll put a link to that. I think everyone should watch it. It's very enlightening. You get a lot of answers to a lot of different things. One of the things that it was at the end of the Q&A, they were asked, They were asked specifically, why did Bitcoin ABC argue against using Nakamoto Consensus as the governance model for BCH in the upcoming fork at the Bangkok meeting? So I'll get to what Jonathan Tumin responded. But what I thought was interesting specifically is that Omri himself said, people will do well to actually reread the white paper. I think that Nakamoto Consensus is probably quite misunderstood. People will do well to actually reread the white paper on that front. So that, I saw that. I was like, well, like we just finished going into the white paper in a lot of detail. I think it's actually pretty clear what Nakamoto Consensus was like, how it was spelled out in the white paper, right? So before we get there, the answer, I thought the most interesting thing, immediately after that question's asked, Jonathan Tumin, who was pretty vocal throughout the whole Q&A, said immediately, because it doesn't work. Nakamoto Consensus would work for a soft fork, but not a hard fork. You can't use a hash war to resolve this issue. If you have different hard forking rule sets, you're going to have a persistent chain split no matter what the hash rate distribution is. Whether or not we are willing to use Nakamoto Consensus to resolve issues is not the issue right here. What the issue is that it is technically impossible. So that was interesting. So Omri's, we could maybe even just pull up the audio. I don't know. Well, we're already halfway through. We'll keep saying it. We'll put a link. Anyone can listen to this, watch it, right? So Omri responded, if you have an incompatible chain set, you get a permanent chain split no matter what. Also, I think that Nakamoto Consensus is probably quite misunderstood. People will do well to actually reread the white paper on that front. What the Nakamoto Consensus describes generally is going to be miners starting to enforce different rule sets, and everybody is going to reorg into the longest chain. So that's I think we agree there. This is to decide among changes that are compatible with each other. Because if they are not compatible with each other, nobody is going to reorg into any chain, and what you get is two chains. Nakamoto Consensus cannot resolve that. And finally, Tumin responds again, Nakamoto Consensus is in the white paper is about determining which of several valid histories of transaction ordering is the true canonical ordering, and which transactions are approved and confirmed and which ones are not. It is not for determining which rule sets. The only decision Nakamoto Consensus is allowed to make is on which of the various types of blocks or block contents that would be valid according to the rule set is the true history. Okay, so this thing was called Bitcoin Cash Developers on Nakamoto Consensus. Okay. Those are kind of the responses to the Q&A. Again, I'll put that in there. So we actually had a response to this, but specifically, what Tumin is kind of arguing seems to be a contradiction. It seems to be a contradiction to the white paper, right? Because the white paper, he says specifically, it is not for determining which rule sets. Okay. However, the last sentence of the white paper says, any needed rules and incentives can be enforced with this consensus mechanism. Okay. However, in kind of what was spelled out in this response here is that I've actually never heard someone say Nakamoto Consensus doesn't work. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I think what he was trying to say is it doesn't work for this idea of we want to implement two different changes, right? Therefore, I think I understand what you're trying to say. I don't want to just be like, Tumin thinks Nakamoto Consensus is work. I think there's just a disagreement on what Nakamoto Consensus means, right? And I thought this was an important point, right? So we said specifically, compatibility is not discussed because it is implicit that there exists one outcome. In the case of the United States, right, Democrats and Republicans don't cast their votes, because specifically the white paper says they vote with their CPU power. Democrats and Republicans don't cast their votes with the expectation that a bill is passed for just a percentage of the country, right? The only way you have governance is that the majority votes and the majority wins, right? You don't actually have this splitting and it just people go by their own rules, right? The rules that they want to follow in perpetuity, right? The whole point of voting is that you have one outcome, right? Now, we took that a little further because I thought that was a little further. So we spelled out this right here, right? Satoshi Nakamoto, a Nakamoto Consensus. All this is just quotes from Satoshi on Nakamoto Consensus. So we spelled out all the white paper. I'm not going to go into the white paper because, I mean, Corey, we just did 3 hours on this.
Yeah.
Right? We just did 3 hours on the whole white paper. We talked about Nakamoto Consensus a lot, which is why I thought it was a little odd. Like Omri said, go back and reread the white paper. Well, I mean, we can go back and reread it, but I don't think my opinion is going to change on it, right? I think it's pretty clear as to what the paper is saying here.
Should we do another sequel to the series?
God, I don't think so. It's a lot of reading too, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and you know, Omri actually, like, he tweeted about us, or he subtweeted us, whatever the hell you call it. And he brought up BTC, which again, I saw that coming from a mile away. We talked about that a lot too, right? I don't know if we talked about it in the white paper series itself or the episodes around the white paper series, but that's pretty much the argument that's going to come back at us is if Nakamoto Consensus was all that mattered and blah, 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 then BTC is Bitcoin and, you know, we're frauds for saying Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, that argument will go away when BCH is the longest chain. That's going to happen. Technically, even BCH might be the longest chain because of the ridiculous difficulty adjustment algorithm that occurred immediately after and then was readjusted, right? So the EDA is the reason why we have the quote-unquote longest chain. But I don't think you can... I just think it's really disingenuous to say Nakamoto Consensus, BCH and BTC, it's not an example of Nakamoto Consensus. You're talking about changing the difficulty. You're talking about you're completely messing, with the incentive structure, right?
Right.
Completely messing with the incentive to even have a miner pick one chain. You have replay protection. So, you know, I'm not going to get into that. We've talked about that on the show a lot. I knew that was coming from somebody. I guess it was from Omri saying the longest chain is BTC. So fine, whatever. Okay. Anyway, so the white paper, we'll put a link to this, but this is all just Satoshi quotes in the white paper. So you can look at the white paper. Again, I think this last sentence is very important. Any needed rules and incentives can be forced with this consensus mechanism. Now, it gets better. So these are emails from Satoshi, right? So even if a bad guy does over proof of work or the network, it's not like he's instantly rich. All he can accomplish is to take back money he himself spent, like bouncing a check. To exploit it, he would have to buy something from a merchant, wait till it ships, then overproof. Okay, hang on. We don't need to read all these. There's a lot of quotes here, but
yeah.
Here you go. The CPU proof of work or proof of vote must have the final say. The only way for everyone to stay on the same page is to believe that the longest chain is always the valid one, no matter what. Satoshi in another email to James Donald, he says specifically, any nodes that had other transactions, not including blocks, since it's now invalid according to the accepted chain. Okay. Now, that's fine. We don't have to go into that. There's a specific quote I'm looking for. You can see any user upon receiving the proof of work chain can see what the majority of the network has approved. Okay. Self-evident proof that it came from the globally shared view. And the last one here on Bitcoin Talk. There is no way for the software to automatically know if one chain is better than the other except by the greatest proof of work. In the design, it was necessary for it to switch to a longer chain, no matter how far back it has to go. There's actually one quote, I must have missed it and skipped around here. He says specifically, he says to Hal Finney, it is strictly necessary that the longest chain is always considered the valid one. Okay? This is like super duper 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 clear. You know what I mean? So the fact of the matter is that in November, if the ABC client in consensus rules has the majority of the hash rate, we will support that. That's all we've ever said on the show, right? Everyone, they think we're, whatever we are, we're just okay, right? We're a PR firm. I don't care. I align with the idea of just increase the block size, and I don't think the ordering has enough consensus. I don't think whatever. But if they have convinced enough miners and they get the longest chain, fine. I'm okay with that. I'll accept it. That's BCH. Okay. It just seems really weird to me that they're trying to argue anything different when Satoshi was very clear. The longest chain is always considered the valid one. And any needed rules can be enforced with that consensus mechanism, right? Whew. All right. Long-winded.
Yeah.
But I want to touch on that. I thought that, again, the rest of QA is important. And I'm not attacking ABC. I just disagreed strongly with what Tumim said specifically, that he said it doesn't work, and that's ridiculous. It's never actually been tried. I mean, it really hasn't been tried in a way to make altering decisions. I mean, it's been used. It's used every day, right? But we haven't actually seen like a large decision on the network made, except for in the case of the BCH BTC split. But is that Nakamoto Consensus? Is that something else? You know. Whew. All right, long-winded there, but
yeah, I think this is a good segue into the Jimmy.
Yes, so
interview.
Talk with Jimmy about the SV client. We talk with him about his history. We asked about Craig, which I think I'm pretty sure that answer got messed up. It wasn't until after that we had the courage to tell Jimmy to repeat everything he said. Because that was a little, that's tough to tell someone to please repeat the last 2 minutes of what they just said. But.
It's all good.
So yeah, we're talking about a lot of things, so enjoy that. We're going to promote the heck out of the CoinGeek conference. We got that coming up, and we're excited about heading over there and playing a role in that. So
yeah, very excited. So
good to go.
I think that's it.
All right. Well,
I think
enjoy with Jimmy Nguyen. It was a big win for our podcast.
Yeah, it's a big win.
Big win.
I love that.
Cool. All right.
All right.
All right. We have a big win for our podcast today. I've been waiting to say that one. We are joined by Jimmy Nguyen from nChain. So thank you, Jimmy, for joining us.
Happy to be here.
We're looking forward to this discussion. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the Bitcoin Cash world. But before we get into maybe all the stuff coming soon, I guess we want to start and say, who are you and like what's your background? How did you get involved in Bitcoin Cash and what started your interest?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. We're big fans of the Beach Boys. You call yourself the Beach Boys or the BCH Boys, or both?
It's a mix.
Yeah. I think it's very clever. I like clever words. So I was an intellectual property and digital technology lawyer for many years, over 21 years in the United States. I was a partner at major U.S. law firms. I represented a range of clients from big multinational conglomerates like the Microsofts and Amazons of the world to tech startups, big and small, such as Uber, and a lot of the entertainment media, consumer products, retail industry, from motion picture studios to television networks, on a whole range of work in their IP and technology areas. So I started as a lawyer in the mid-1990s at the boom of the internet at the time, the first, the last major big technology that I think is affecting the world like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is now. I did that for a long time, had a very successful career. And worked with a lot of big businesses on developing their digital and technology strategies. As part of that, one of my clients was the Canadian business that had been part of the nChain group, the nTrust and then renamed nCrypt business, which was an electronic money transfer service. And I and my firm at the time handled their IP work and other business work. They started looking at virtual currencies as a faster means to do international money remittance, because there's big fees that are charged if you're sending, for example, money from Canada back to the Philippines, from migrants. And so they explored some virtual currency inventions. Actually, we have filed for some patent applications for virtual currency system they had been thinking of. And then when the nChain business got created and Craig was moving from Australia to London for it to be formed, I was doing some assistance from behind the scenes. And then at a certain point, there was a conversation about bringing me on board because the folks knew that I had been thinking about doing something else. Law is a great career, but after 21 years of it, I was getting a little, bored, looking for new opportunities. I've been approached by a number of people over the years to tech companies or venture capital firms. And none of them quite seemed right. And then because nChain was building a significant IP and technology portfolio, one of the needs we had was for someone to help guide the business and commercialization of that. Because a lot of our team here is scientific in nature or they're developers, and we needed to add to sort of our business leadership. So I got asked to take on a role, and that's morphed over a period of time as we grew, and now I continue to be one of the key people who leads the growth and expansion of nChain.
Very nice. So you said you started working with Craig a little bit a while back. Could you maybe just explain what that process has been like? Craig, right? He gets often misunderstood sometimes in the community, and I'm sure it's not his intention to do that. Could you maybe just elaborate? What your involvement with Craig's been like?
It's been an adventurous journey. That's what I'm going to say. I view it as this crazy opportunity. And I will say crazy in some ways, in all the best means, to be at the very forefront of this amazing new revolution with Bitcoin, with somebody, whether you agree with him or not, whether you like him or not, it's clearly one of the and I'm not sure I could be anywhere else now. It's so what's it like? It's a challenge.
Oh, Jimmy, sorry, I think we lost you.
I think we lost you a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. You're back.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Sure, it happened.
I think we missed a big chunk of that. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I was going to say working with Craig is a crazy adventure, and I mean that in all of the best meanings of the word crazy. He is provocative. He is, controversial, I know. But I had to really take a look at what it is that I believed in, right? What I believed was the future of Bitcoin and the technology that underlies it, and whether or not, no matter what he says or how he says it, whether I believed in what Craig's mission is. And the short answer is I do. I have for a while. I do. I still do. But my relationship with Craig has evolved over time because it takes a while to learn to work with someone like him. When I first started working with him, I'll admit, like most people, it can be a challenge understanding what he means, what he's trying to accomplish. And there was a moment, I don't really know exactly when, but there was a moment where, I don't know, a little light bulb went off in my head where I started understanding more what he was saying. And then I learned that I had an ability to help translate what was in his head, was trying to communicate in ways that other people don't. And I think that's a big part of the role I play. Really trying to help Craig implement. It's not easy. We don't always agree. To those out in the Bitcoin world who think, we all just follow what Craig says, that's totally not true. I have disagreements with him all the time. Tell him what I feel. Often I may agree with his goal, but not how he wants to do something. We have a conversation about that. And we read records. So what I want you guys to do is capture and change. It's not just Craig's goal, march to a single tune. That's not true. I think Craig really values people. And disagree with him, but for reasons. He values and he respects you. Much. He'll listen to their opinion, and we don't always agree. But we have a good working relationship now, better than he has with a lot of people, as his wife tells me all the time. I think the key to working with Craig is to earn his respect, and then you'll do much better.
Great. So maybe if we could walk through the history. I mean, I think the first time a lot of people like you guys stepped on the scene was maybe was it Arnhem conference back in 2017?
Yes.
And that was kind of the moment where everyone was trying to figure out what are we going to do to scale Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. And immediately. So Craig gives his presentation when John Matonis gives him the speaking time. And then a few months later, Bitcoin Cash is formed. So I guess what was your guys thinking around then, maybe just a year ago, and then we can maybe take that into what you guys are thinking now. Like what was the necessity for Bitcoin in 2017, and have those needs really changed since then? Or
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's always been the scaling challenge, right? Before the emergence of Bitcoin Cash, there was not going to be a clear path to massive scaling of the Bitcoin network. And that's why Craig was so frustrated. You saw that frustration come out in his speech in Arnhem. nChain had been operating mostly kind of behind the scenes until shortly before then, when we emerged publicly. We decided it was time to start interacting with the world and start demonstrating what we were doing. He expressed in that speech, probably not in the way I would, but in a very Craig way, why he really felt the time to scale was now. We had to scale and scale big, and that was not happening on Bitcoin Core. And what's happened since? So Bitcoin Cash emerged shortly thereafter, August 1st, 2017. We decided to then support it. We saw it as a very powerful vehicle to restore the original path to Bitcoin, to become really, truly peer-to-peer electronic cash, because we need to get to bigger blocks, much lower fees, faster transactions, and then also begin the path to restoring opcodes and removing artificial limits that have been placed on a number of the features in Bitcoin Core. So then we threw the full support of our organization behind that. We found allies such as CoinGeek, who's become one of the biggest Bitcoin Cash supporters and miners in the world. And eventually we started nChain's own affiliated mining operation, BMG, in which we mine Bitcoin Cash. So I look at the emergence of Bitcoin Cash as an amazing thing, a big win for the Bitcoin world. It allowed us and others who are working in this field to really, as opposed to fighting against the Bitcoin Core folks, to just go fight for something. And I'm a big believer in that. Let's not spend a lot of our time fighting against other people. Let's just fight for what we believe and let the market, competition, miners decide.
Yeah. And so I guess taking that to where we are now, obviously in November, there's the Satoshi's Vision client that some of the nChain folks are working on. Are you confident that the Satoshi's Vision client will be the Bitcoin Cash client used by the majority of miners in November? Or
well, let me correct one thing that you
Sure.
said. We're not calling it the Satoshi Vision coin because we're not trying to create a separate coin. We're not trying to create a new token. We're not trying to create BSV as something different than Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin, the Bitcoin SV is simply a new full node implementation of the Bitcoin Cash protocol. It is another choice for miners. I understand that people get concerned that there could be a chain split. We don't think that that if there is a chain split, we believe we will be the majority, and we believe that any minority chain will eventually die off, and so that we don't think there's going to be a situation where you're going to have what are two variants surviving of Bitcoin Cash. We're confident miners will make the right choice because our message is very simple, is to provide miners the influence, the voice and choice that they always should have had in the direction of Bitcoin. So we are creating Bitcoin SV at the request of CoinGeek, and we know also other miners are going to be supportive of this because, to be frank, we had felt that the direction of Bitcoin for so long had been too driven by developers trying to make paternalistic choices for miners and setting, for example, block size cap or deciding what opcode should be in or not. When at the end of the day, this is a network that should recognize the value in skin in the game, investment, and resources that miners put in to provide the computing power and security. And without them, there would be no network. So they should drive the train.
And recently, they had the Future of Bitcoin Summit in Bangkok, and you were there to represent Bitcoin SV. Could you maybe elaborate on some of the critical points that you were making, specifically in regards to the urgency? Connor and I talk a lot about the urgency to scale before the next halving of the Bitcoin reward. Could you maybe just elaborate some of the importance that you guys are trying to make?
Absolutely. So the message I delivered in Bangkok was the need to create an implementation of the Bitcoin Cash protocol that is stable, scalable, and secure. Those are our three most important pillars. Stability is important because we don't want to be in a position where developer groups are disagreeing every 6 months about what feature set to update or change in the Bitcoin protocol. Instead, our message is very simple. Let's restore Bitcoin to its original protocol, version 0.1, essentially, from the Bitcoin protocol, and allow it to scale. The reason we want to do that by restoring, for example, Satoshi opcodes. All right, we lose each other periodically. So let me start with stability. Why do we want a stable Bitcoin protocol? And this is a key part of the Bitcoin SV message. We want to restore the original Bitcoin protocol to its version 0.1, allow it to scale, but then when we say lock the protocol, we don't mean forever not, allowing any changes. We mean allowing it to be stable, much like the internet protocol has been stable all of these decades with some evolution. We're at IP version 4. But once we restore the protocol to its original state, which we believe is sufficient and capable of enabling the functions we all want to do on Bitcoin, then allow changes to be made only on rare instances when there's really a need for it and a really strong consensus for it, as opposed to the situation we're in now, where now that developer groups supportive of Bitcoin Cash have freedom from Bitcoin Core, I feel like there's this desire to, everyone thinking, okay, what can I add? What can I change? It's not a place for experimentation, right? Developers, I think, should be focused on sustaining a stable protocol. And the reason that's important is we want big businesses to build on top of this protocol, their applications, their projects, their tokens, their smart contract solutions. And any big business needs to invest millions of dollars, a lot of time, and a lot of resources to build a project on any application. Before they invest in that and commit to those resources, and I know, having been a lawyer for a lot of these big businesses, they're going to want to know that platform is not going to change in 6 months or in 12 months, because it'll take them longer than that to build their applications, and they're not going to want to commit investment resources to build on that. An example I can give you is we get approached by companies who want us to help them develop solutions. Sometimes they're debating whether to use Bitcoin Cash or some other blockchain platform. And they want us to convince them. One of the things they ask us is, well, if I start building on Bitcoin Cash now, am I going to have to change things every 6 months when there's a protocol? Because that's annoying. It's difficult. It takes a lot of time and resources. So that's why we think having a stable platform is really key. Just like there's a stable internet protocol upon which businesses build their websites, applications, mobile apps. So that's first. Second is scalability. You pointed out the need for scale.
I mean, so I guess maybe let's just take it back a minute. I don't know. It's working right now. So
yeah.
Scalability. I know you had mentioned a few.
Yeah, let me start with scalability again. So a big pillar of our Bitcoin SV vision is massive scaling of the Bitcoin Cash network. Now, we announced a desire to start with default block size cap at 128 megabytes rather than the 32 megabytes, which other developer groups want to stay at for the time being. And that's not because Craig or I sat around and just randomly picked the 128 number out of the sky. It's because of an economic imperative that is essential for sustaining the Bitcoin Cash network and its miners. In 2 years, the year 2020, the block reward will cut in half again, from its current 12.5 points to 6.25. And that will happen again a number of years after that, down to 3.125. And in order for miners to maintain their profitability as the block reward continues to cut in half, they need to make up the value of that, if not more, in the other revenue stream, which are transaction fees, which will need to diversify, not just for payment transactions, which are small in data size, big in transaction fees, but in higher data premium type transactions, such as token or smart contract. So we did some modeling at nChain using our business analysts to try and estimate what transaction volume, what block size needs to be achieved in just 2 years in 2020 to make up for the value of the lost 6.25 coins in block having. We modeled it using different variables, which I'm going to actually publish some of the slides, and actually someone who transcribed the speech actually published the slides. And you don't have to agree with the variables, and you can play around with them, but the message is clear. We modeled it at what would be BCH price point at $1,000 US, 5,000, 10,000 US dollars for 2 years. Did modeling based on different composition of transactions in a block. Different percentages of payment transactions versus smart contract or token transactions. And we also did it at different fee levels, a low, medium, and high fee level, because fee levels aren't always consistent. And what we found is that the minimum number of size of a block had to be in 2 years to sustain to replace the value of 6.25 coins, ranged from, using these different variables, from 200, I think, or 280 megabytes to all the way up to 30 gigabytes, with somewhere in the middle, looking at anything from 2 to 8 or 12 gigabytes in size. No matter which of those scenarios you accept, the message is clear. In 2 years, we have to get to very large blocks. Let's just say 6, 8 gigabyte blocks to maintain miner profitability. If you want to get there in 2 years, you have to start the scaling process now. You can't keep it at 32 megabytes today for the next 6 months, and then all of a sudden within a year jump to 4 or 6 gigabytes. In addition, going back to the business point I made earlier, big businesses will only feel comfortable building their applications and projects on a blockchain which they believe will scale, right? They need bigger transaction volume. They need bigger data size. And they're not going to feel comfortable if you're an Amazon or you're a big bank and you want to build on Bitcoin Cash, you're going to first look at the capacity. And we need to build the road, create the road so that they can start moving their cars, trucks, and freight carriers on it, right? The road has to exist and it has to be wide enough and big enough. And that's why scaling has to happen. One, to maintain the economic viability and profitability for miners. And second, to allow big businesses the comfort and confidence that Bitcoin Cash is the blockchain for them to build on. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg syndrome, right? So I totally understand why people say the current payment transaction volume does not justify going to big blocks, 128 megabytes, but they're thinking too short term. They're thinking about immediate payment needs. We're thinking about what the network has to be to sustain itself and to thrive in 2 years and down the road. Unless we start that now, it's going to be too late.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, have you met a lot of miners who are opposed to this, like setting their own limit? Like that seems the crazy part to me. I don't see a lot of miners out in public opposed to like setting their own limit, for example.
I think most of the mining community had not even really thought about whether to change the configuration and change the default block size for themselves, because it's not been a talking point. Other implementations didn't advertise the fact that you could do that, right? And I think miners are so used to, particularly from the years of Bitcoin Core, sort of following what the developer group provides them, right? And that's a paradigm shift we want to make. They shouldn't just be following what developer groups give them. Instead, they are the primary users who sustain the network, and they should be driving the train. And so the ones we've talked to, I don't think there's been any real opposition to allowing the miners to set their own default block size. I think a lot of them just had never really thought about it. I think until this conversation has started happening.
I've mentioned too, I feel like when Craig first gave that presentation in Arnhem, that seemed to me the first time too that message was trying to be relayed, right? Where miners were supposed to be, the stewards of the system instead of Bitcoin Core, correct, for example. Yeah.
Right. And what our concern is, as we've tried to work with the other developer groups, is that in maybe a less dramatic way, we're concerned that the Bitcoin Cash developer groups were moving back to this, thought process where they are dictating what is in the protocol or not. And I think everyone's opinion should be taken into account. But at the end of the day, miners should choose. And that's why miners should choose their own configurations. And we really one day shouldn't have a default block size at all. We're saying go to 128 now as a path to getting bigger and bigger. But eventually, Craig and team here want to just have no limit, right? Because at the end of the day, miners will compete for what makes sense for them. That's how it is. This is a competitive marketplace. And what it emphasizes is a thing people forget about Bitcoin. People sometimes think so much about its technical points and its technical solutions. But at its core, why it works is it's an economic system. There's game theory and economics involved. And if you don't honor and understand those economic incentives and construct the path and the roadmap to account for them, I think that's where you'll undermine the network. And that's why scaling is important now. If you don't scale, it's not the block reward halving that's coming in 2 years and then several years after that is just going to undermine the profitability of the network for miners.
Yeah.
And then finally, the last thing I'd like to say at Bitcoin SV, and we touched on it in Bangkok, is the need for security. We fully understand that miners, and rightfully so, want to make sure that scaling larger will be safe. And that is why we are taking a number of steps to do what we think is going to be the best and most world-class approach to Bitcoin implementation that's happened to date. We've hired a top-notch outside security audit firm to look at the code, to continue testing it. We're developing a world-class quality assurance program. We're unveiling that's CoinGeek sponsored a top-of-the-line bug bounty program to encourage responsible disclosure of bugs. We've already built a set of 7 staged environments for testing. Steve Shatters and our team here, Daniel Connolly, have already launched a number of Gigablock testnet initiatives, one of which will be public. We have a first iteration already running that's informing some of the decisions we're going to make. So security is very important to us, and we want to work with miners. We want to actually release data to allow miners to be able to make their own decisions about it. So I don't want to discount that. I don't want people to feel that, oh, we're just going to go to big blocks and say it doesn't matter, because the network will, support it. We fully recognize that it is our responsibility, as well as others we're working with in the Bitcoin world, to make sure it's safe.
So you mentioned maybe the importance of building on top of the protocol instead of maybe making changes to the protocol. There's a lot of, there's a few companies that you guys are involved with that have kind of made it their mission to build on top of the protocol. And they're doing some really interesting things, I think. The one that's, they all are, I think CentB just launched beta. Handcash, obviously about to go into iOS. They have a great product as well. And then Ryan Charles is doing some crazy awesome stuff with yours and the money button. How have those processes been? And are you looking forward to, this is a dumb question, but what are you looking forward to most, I guess, seeing out of them? Yeah.
Oh, it's been really exciting watching those companies that nChain's invested in. I am excited, first of all, to see the continued enthusiasm of those young entrepreneurs be fulfilled. It's one of the best things about what we do is not just seeing technical product release, but just seeing excitement. That's something we don't see, for example, over on the Bitcoin Core side of the world, which is, people building great new applications, on a routine basis. I'm really excited to see Money Button take off. I think that was a very smart strategy shift by Ryan Charles and yours.org. I think the original business plan product is good, but Money Button, I think, is a big win, as I would say. I think it's going to be a solution that big enterprises will be able to use to incorporate into their websites and applications. So I'm excited to see him advance that and move it into commercial usage. Because then he's going to have to start a business development cycle, to support that. CentB, I just downloaded the iOS app when it came out. I'm excited about that because I'm an iOS user. And so I haven't got the Handcash app yet. I'm waiting for it. But with CentB, we are actually working very closely with them on a variety of things, including not just sort of their long-term roadmap. But as we announced earlier this year, they are working with us to develop a merchant SDK, I guess is the best way to call it, for integrators in the payment processing network to make it easier for merchants to accept Bitcoin Cash. And so we are in the planning process of that with them. And so I'm excited for that to come out, as well as the expansion of their product. I know they're going to add different features to it to add to the merchant ecosystem in sub-Saharan Africa. And then Handcash, well, I can't wait for the iOS app. I'm actually hopping on a plane to Madrid tomorrow. We'll see them, briefly. They have a lot of things planned, which I can't talk about now, but I know they're going to unveil at the CoinGeek conference at the end of November 28th through 30th, at the Mermaid in Puddle Dock, London. So I can't talk about that too much, but I can tell you they have got some really exciting ideas. And they're going to be working closely with us to fulfill them. But the big thing I like amongst all three of them is just enthusiasm. All a great bunch of entrepreneurs, a real pleasure to work with, and all very genuinely nice, well-meaning people who believe very much in the mission of Bitcoin Cash.
And all these different interfaces and softwares. We see it as like the next step to professionalizing Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash. And I guess, what do you see as like the very next step? Because I mean, obviously, it's going to take a while to get to 6 gigabyte blocks. We need that scale. What do you kind of see as the next barrier, obstacle that we need to overcome to get there?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I think people don't think about that enough, this need to professionalize Bitcoin Cash, and to have our ecosystem grow up. It's a point I made in Bangkok. And I think it starts with stabilizing the protocol, right? For Bitcoin to professionalize, you need major enterprises to feel confident that this is both a cryptocurrency they want to use, as well as a blockchain they wish to build on top of. And that requires keeping it stable. It requires, I think, moving away from a system where developer groups are talking every few months about what feature changes to make or not. Because I don't want to be having disagreements and fights with other developer groups every 6 months. Miners don't want that. Businesses don't want that. None of us want that, right? And instead, I think once we restore the protocol, keep it stable, there won't be this need for ongoing developer group, conversations, except for, periodic things. So I think those are stages to professionalizing Bitcoin. It starts with changing our paradigm of what the protocol should be, and what the role of the developer group should be. Because once we get Bitcoin SV out and it's running, we get the feature sets locked in that we want, we don't really want to be bothering it. We just want to leave it that way. And that will, I think, entice more big enterprises to start building on top of it. And that will help professionalize it. I think the world also needs to move to more commercially supported sets of developers, right? The Bitcoin world started with lots of volunteers, which is great, right? Donating their time, working in groups. But as we've seen, that becomes a challenge because no one wants to leave a full-time job to devote their life for free working for Bitcoin. It's hard to attract the top talent. And there's nothing wrong with it. A lot of open source projects use commercially driven teams, right, from companies that provide developers or developer groups to support open source projects. And by the way, I want to make that point very clearly, that Bitcoin SV is released or will be released under the MIT open source license. So I think as big enterprises start feeling comfortable using the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, they will probably start contributing developers to it. And I think that will help, because that's been a challenge, right? Keeping people consistently working in developer groups, feeling they're financially supported. We need to solve that. And I think that'll come with more big enterprises working on Bitcoin.
Do you, I guess, so obviously November 28th through 30th, right? CoinGeek conference in London. We're excited we're going to be there. First time ever going to London. So, but what do you...
I'll make sure to take you to a pub and you can have like 4 pints.
That's all I need. Yeah.
Perfect.
What are you looking forward to for N-Chain in the November CoinGeek conference? I guess just after the fork or maybe during the fork or that whole month? I know in May you guys had a lot of announcements that came out. What's coming down the pipeline for you guys come November?
Yeah, it's going to be an eventful month. Let's just say that. It's interesting that CoinGeek Week will be happening just 2 weeks after the November 15th protocol upgrade date. We'll see what happens. I think it'll be eventful. We have a lot planned. CoinGeek Week is now a week-long event as opposed to just a single-day conference. It's really 3 days. I'll give a plug for them since I'm helping them run it and will be hosting and emceeing the event again. It's November 28th through 30th. At the Mermaid, which is a theater and conference center. I know it's got a fun name, the Mermaid. And it's in Puddle Dock, London. So it's a bit out of the London center, but it's a great venue for an event. The conference will be split over 3 days, where one day will be focused on application developers. So we'll have people like the Handcash team, for example, coming out to speak about, new features and things they're unveiling. So I know a lot of those companies who are speaking will be planning some announcements. Another day we focus on merchants, because a big part of the CoinGeek conference's message is to try and encourage the emergence of true B-commerce, Bitcoin commerce, using Bitcoin through merchants and points of sale. And then finally, the last big day will be a day of the future, looking to the future. So in terms of what N-Chain, what you can expect from N-Chain there will be probably some presentation by Bitcoin SV. We'll talk about, what the state of that is and what's going on with the development implementations at that time. I know Craig is planning to announce some new work that our team is fiercely finishing to make sure it's all done so he can talk about it. Powerful new use case for Bitcoin Cash, so I won't steal his thunder and let him do that. And then if we are ready, we may have some other project or things to announce. So I'll keep my mouth beyond that at this time to save it for the conference. But we hope people come. It'll be a lot of fun, and London's a great city. Be a little chilly at that time of year, but don't worry, we'll keep everybody warm.
Great. I think the last thing maybe I just want to ask about, just because I'm genuinely curious and we have you here. Maybe I want to take it back to 2017 real quick. Like, what got you passionate about, like what brings you, for us, obviously the passion with Bitcoin comes from the fact that having a new hard money outside of control of a third party, right? That was always the main selling point. What for you drives you to work on Bitcoin every day?
That's a really good question. I think it's two things. I think it's the excitement and opportunity to work at the forefront of what I think is the next major technology leap of our lifetime that will impact the world like the internet.
Jimmy, one more time, just stop and start, and I think we should be good here. Sorry. We might be right.
Almost there.
Almost there.
See, I can hear you now. I don't know why it happens, but we're good. Yep.
Okay. So what excites me about working in this field is a couple of things. One is the opportunity to work at the very forefront and at the center of the next major technology leap of our lifetime, which I think will impact the world the way the internet did in the 1990s. And back then, I worked in the world of internet and digital technology as outside counsel. Here's the opportunity to be in the middle of it. Another reason is empowerment. I think a lot of us who really believe in Bitcoin believe in its ability to empower people, right? Because particularly people in unbanked populations, right, who need access to financial services and inclusion in a way that Bitcoin can provide, that they can't because they don't have bank accounts. And a lot of people believe in Bitcoin, believe in its financial sovereignty powers, right? To really allow you to really have real control over your money. That speaks to me, and I think it's because, my whole life I've been an outsider. I was an immigrant to the United States, a group of racial minority, and I'm gay, right? And so there's this whole life experience I've had where I've always been kind of the outsider to big institutions and the establishment. And so there's something about Bitcoin's ability to give people, no matter who you are, where you come from, the ability to have more control over your life, your finances, and what you can do with them. I think that really speaks to me. And finally, I'll be honest, it's Craig. I have days where what we do is hard. Working for EdgeChain is hard. I know we're not always the most popular kid on the block in the Bitcoin world. Working with Craig is a challenge. And it's tiring. I spend a lot of my life, 80% of my life, traveling around the world. And I have moments where I say, why do I do this? And I, for better or for worse, I see through a lot of the cloud around Craig's vision for Bitcoin. We call, now the Satoshi vision as we're launching Bitcoin SV to restore it. I believe in it. He wants 5 billion people using Bitcoin one day. He wants it to be a source of power and independence for people. I do believe in him, even though it's not always easy to. And more than anything else, that's really important to me because this is not just a job. This is, I talk about it with him, this is a life mission he's clearly been on for a long time. And it's a mission I've decided to devote myself to with him and with the rest of our team. And that requires fully believing in what you're doing and who you're doing it with. So for reasons that maybe other people can't see because they don't interact with him the way I do, I do believe in him. I believe in what he wants for Bitcoin. And I hope that the world will see as we go about the process of launching Bitcoin SV, marching towards a massively scaled Bitcoin network, that we believe miners will make the right choice.
Do you view that
choice is Bitcoin SV?
That's great. Do you view that vision as transforming, like you mentioned, Africa? Like, I know you guys were in Africa and there's videos of you guys there. Like, what was that experience like? And this is my last question, but what was the experience like? And like, how do you view that vision transforming countries like Africa?
I fully expect that the first geographic areas that will really benefit going to be developed Southeast Asia, parts of South America, Latin America, Africa. For those of us who live in westernized countries like Australia or UK or US, and Bitcoin will come here, but it won't have an impact as quickly as it will in places such as Rwanda, where we were at. There's a need for easier financial services for people there where they don't have bank accounts, but with a mobile phone, which they do have, and a Bitcoin wallet on their mobile phone, they can transact. They can send money to anyone in the world instantly for cheap. They can run small businesses, right? They can have money lent, based upon their Bitcoin holdings, which is opening up a world potentially of microloans, and that will really, I think, give people a lot more power over their finances. So it'll be in places like the Philippines, where I've spoken a lot as well. 86% of people in the Philippines do not have bank accounts, and I don't think those of us living in Western worlds really understand the impact of that. What all the things you cannot do in life because you don't have a bank account. Everything that is so much harder for it. But with a Bitcoin wallet and the services that a Centbee or a hand cash could provide one day, I think will make their lives so much easier. Especially for remittance. A lot of people in those countries, when they're young, they leave to work in other countries to make more money and send back to their families, and they're paying 6 to 8% of the amounts they send back in remittance fees internationally. But with Bitcoin, you could do that for less than a penny from anywhere in the world. So it's countries like the Philippines, Rwanda, that will benefit from this most. In Rwanda, one of the conversations we had while speaking was the question of whether Africa should have a single digital currency, a single cryptocurrency. And our answer is yes, and it shouldn't be some new token someone creates, some new Africa coin. It should just be Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, Jimmy, thank you for taking the time. I know, I'll tell you, a lot of people that are new to Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, I've heard it from myself, from experience, they really enjoy your passion. I think you get people excited about Bitcoin. So thanks for being you, I guess, and keep that going.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to everything that's happening in November. It'll be a full month of things. So, but yeah, we're looking forward to the CoinGeek conference as well, and maybe seeing you there.
Well, you definitely will see me there, and I can't wait to see you there. And for everyone who's watching this at this interesting time in the evolution of Bitcoin Cash, I think the last thing I want to say is I know the emergence of our plans for Bitcoin SV has caused some people to be nervous about what will happen with Bitcoin Cash. I want people to know that our vision is for a robust, thriving Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. We believe that's going to happen. We believe that miners will make the right choice. But more importantly, no matter how it all plays out, I want people to know that we are doing this because we believe it's necessary for the viability, sustainability, and scalability of Bitcoin Cash. So we can't wait to see how it all works out, and we're committed to its success.
We're very happy to hear that. I'm looking forward to it too.
Great. Well, thank you, Jimmy, for taking the time. Yeah.
Thanks,
Jimmy.